we're not sitting in order of generation. I'm definitely not the youngest one up here. I know it was hard to tell, but but we each represent different generations. So we're going to talk a little bit first about which generation we represent. So I have our oldest member first. As our baby boomer. So would you like to talk a little bit about your generation? What makes you unique?
Sorry. I'm old. Oh, I love the pictures. I asked Allison if she would make the slide for me, because that's part of my generation, is not knowing how to do it. We grew up in a time where we used a telephone, you know, where you picked it up and it was connected to the phone and it had that cord, or it was on the wall. We did have one like that too. And the only way you could have any privacy is to drag that cord as far as it would go, which of course was the laundry room, which was comfortable. But anyway, yeah. And it's just one number at a time. Got to be patient. I don't know if that has anything to do with our age or not, but anyway, that was the reality of our time. And if it hadn't have been for that phone, there wouldn't be the fancy schmancy phones there are today. There has to be a progression, so it was important. Baby boomers, as we all know, was evidently when the men got home from World War II, they got busy. And yes, and so a lot of babies were born, and I was born in 1948. So like I said, I'm old. And yeah, so much of our history, we watched it happen. And I want to talk about that tonight when we get to some of our other questions. So that's where I will leave off. I'm old.
I am not quite as old, but I guess I'm getting older every day. So I am part of Gen X, or I fell kind of in this weird spot that some people have termed Zennial, because I grew up, I was born in the late 90s? No! 1979, so right kind of at the end of Gen X, but right at the beginning of the Millennials. And so those of us that fall kind of towards that end, we have a lot of similarities between the two, because we can, like the early Gen Xers, can remember a time without computers, but we were in high school right as the internet was really starting. America Online, we had that. I think my senior year, we signed up for America Online, so I could do a high school, my senior final project, we signed up for AOL. That computer on the bottom, that was the first computer we had in my house, an Apple IIe. My dad had it. I have no idea why, because there was really, all we did was play Space Invaders on it. I guess he did something on it, but I really have no idea what. We remember a time without cell phones, so like that pink phone that's up there, we had the touch one, you know? Our cords maybe went a little bit further. We had the cordless phones, which was really nice. Then you didn't have to drag that cord all the way. Cassette tapes, CDs, those things all came out. Walkmans. Actually, when I was doing the pictures for these, it was so funny. I saw a picture of a Walkman, and I was like, I had that one. And it was on eBay for like $150. I don't know who would want it. They don't really last that long. But kind of the same thing, you know, like Atari was the first kind of game system that people had. I did not have one. We had a Nintendo, the very first original Nintendo, that came out again a couple, like 10 years ago or whatever. But all those things were just stepping stones for what we have now. I was playing Mario Brothers with my kids, and they're like, this is like so pixelated. But my son said, but you know, if we didn't have this, we wouldn't have what we have now. So for some of those older Gen Xers, so I was not alive when Nixon resigned, but that was a big part of Gen X life. Berlin Wall falling, I kind of vaguely remember it. I think the Gulf War is probably the biggest thing for me, and then September 11th was also a defining moment for those of us who were a little bit older. And the start of cell phones, those nice flip phones that you couldn't do much on, except for call. All right. Sana. Okay, so what's funny is you put so much stuff on your screen, like that was so much information. And I am a millennial, and I feel like one of the things we'll probably discuss is that millennials are categorized as lazy. And I don't feel that I think it's a reflection on me. I don't feel like I was lazy making my slide, but I feel like I did not put as much as Allison. You had it. So millennials are 1980s to the early 2000s, and I was born in 88, so right there. We had technology is probably the biggest thing about being a millennial. Cell phones, email, social media beginnings. So there was MySpace and LiveJournal and all these different ways to connect through social media that were starting out. Other things like in music, burning CDs and sharing music, streaming music. I never did anything illegal, okay? But apparently it was illegal to burn CDs, so maybe I did. What else do I have on there? Oh, I looked into why it goes from Gen X to Millennial and then Gen Z. And I was like, why aren't we called Gen Y? And it says, technically, we are Generation Y, but became adults around the millennium, and thus we're millennials. If you already knew that, kudos to you, but I did not know that. Our generation is a we want it now, instant gratification kind of generation, because we have all those things at our fingertips all of a sudden. Our moms could know where we were because we had our cell phones. We can get the answers to things because we had cell phones or we had the internet and we had all of that stuff at our fingertips to grow up with. Oh yeah, an iPod is up there, and the Razr cell phones. So a step up from the flip phone of Allison's generation. Razrs, and then it turned into like that kind that you would like whoosh, and do this. I didn't have one of those, but technology progressed, I guess is what I'm getting at. Other things about millennials is that we focus more on a work-life balance than a work. We want to make sure that we can work and play. And we also are more of like a less career-oriented and more focused on what work do I want to do and how can I work for myself. I feel like that's a fairly common theme in my generation as well. A gig economy is what that's called. So I think that's everything that I put on there. Yeah. So those are the millennials. They've got.
Oh, just keep talking. No one needs you.
Hello. Okay. I'm Gen Z, which was people born in 1997 to 2012. I was 2006, which is like kind of in the middle. Yeah. And I grew up asking my mom to play on her iPad, which is probably not good for you, but I grew up where smartphones were readily accepted, like what's the word? Accessible to a lot of people. And where you could watch TV whenever you wanted and however many episodes you wanted to watch mostly without commercials. I grew up with a lot of like Little's Pet Shops, and I collected Beanie Boos. And I don't know, I didn't grow up with like SpongeBob or a lot of Cartoon Network, but we grew up with like the CDs of different shows like Scooby-Doo and like kind of the newer ones of Scooby-Doo and like Justice League with my brothers. We played a lot of console video games, and not so much as like, I don't know, we had like a bunch of Xboxes. We have like, I think 4 at this point. Just gotta get the new one. And I think it might just be personal, but I think core values of Gen Z revolve around authenticity and like relevance on the internet. Authenticity. Being authentic.
Yes.
And being like your own self and individuality, and taking on societal challenges. Like, I don't know, I'm proud of Gen Z for what they've accomplished for being so young. Yeah.
Natalie, what are the Tide Pods up there for?
Gen Z also isn't the smartest. So.
I'm sorry, girls, I don't understand the titles of our generations. You know, like Generation Z? Does that mean the next generation is going to be AA?
They might need to go to AA, but no. Generation Alpha is next.
Oh.
Really?
Yeah, it's Alpha. Yeah.
Who comes up?
Yeah, who's
So just so you guys all know, we are not necessarily scripted tonight. And we are going to have a conversation which we hope will model a conversation that you can have at your tables about some of these same questions. Some of us, because we're prepared people from prepared generations, we have a lot of notes, and then some have less.
I have notes.
So. But one thing that we also did was some of us even asked other people of our same generation these same questions that we're going to discuss. So it's really easy sometimes when you're talking about things like, what do you want others to know about your generation? You can really personalize that and make it become more about your own personality or what you prefer. So we tried to ask some other people within our generation just so it wasn't a super personal thing. So I'm going to go ahead and start off with our first question that we're going to talk about, which is, what would you like others to know about your generation? I think we all have some good things about our generation. So who would like to start?
Well, I can just touch base going back to the lazy millennial generation. I think that we get that stereotype because we do things differently than the generations before us. But I think we also get that stereotype because we care more about bigger issues and less about doing the same traditions that came around. And I think sometimes, like, if you asked me to cook a turkey, I could not do that because I didn't learn how to do that yet. But I do care about, different values and different things, but like specific standards and values maybe I haven't quite put into place in my life or don't want to.
Yeah, but I don't see you, Jana, as being, or Sana,
Did you call me
as
Jana?
being whoever. That's the other thing we do is we forget everything. Henry, you say you're lazy. I'm sorry, But on a Sunday morning, I see you with your husband. I see you up here singing.
Yeah.
He's playing the drums. I see you helping with things around here. You're here tonight.
Yeah.
You're very busy. I think sometimes we just put ourselves down.
That's true. That's true. I think another question that comes up later is about the stereotypes of your generation and how do you fall into that or how do you not? And so, yeah, I think there's definitely some things to be said. Personally, maybe I'm not super lazy, but there's other aspects of life where maybe my generation does model a lazier take on life, so to speak. We're also great multitaskers. What's the question? We're great multitaskers because we grew up with phones and we can text. And we're hopefully not texting and driving, but we could if we needed to. But we are really good at multitasking and maybe doing multiple things at once. And I think that came about, you can have 3 screens and your phone and all these things going on. And just the ability to multitask, I think, was enhanced by having that technology at our fingertips.
Well, and I think that our generation, those of you here, we appreciate history so much. Part of it because we lived through it. I mean, I wasn't here when they invented fire, but I do know someone did. But we enjoy hearing about other people's history and what happened in their time. Like, for instance, just a minute ago, you were all talking about stuff, and I didn't have a clue what they were talking about. Things with letters and things that had to do with technology. Don't ask me what it was, because then we also forget. But I just, we enjoy the history. We want to learn, okay? And we also value our own history, and I think it's fun when others ask us about what's something that happened in your life that was a pretty big deal. I was thinking back, I love, our granny lived with us from the time I was born until a couple years after I was married, and she was born in 1884. So we had more stories about the late 1800s. She had, her father's brother was in the Civil War and was killed in the Civil War. So we visited the battlefield where he died. And it's fascinating, it is, and I think it'd be interesting to others. And then more currently, well, this isn't that current. Remember the Sears Roebuck? Now it's Sears is closing everywhere. But my grandmother's cousin married the original Mr. Sears. So when my granny and my mom were visiting in Chicago one time, they stayed at the Sears home. And Mrs. Sears, who was my granny's, cousin, Mrs. Mexstroth was her name, she wanted Mama to get interested in their son. They were the same age. But thank goodness, or I wouldn't be here. It didn't work. But it's a part of my family's history that I think is pretty fascinating. And I also wanted to let you know, when you showed Jennifer Aniston up there, I'm a cousin of hers. Just thought I'd throw that in. Yeah. What? Really? Yeah.
How so?
Her mother she's gone now, was Linda Dow. And she grew up in the same city where my father's family was, up in Canada.
Whoa.
And and the rest is history. So Dow is her maiden name, and Dow is mine. And so we are related. It won't do you any good, but
That's a good party story.
So,
That's why I wear my hair like this. Go ahead.
so Gen X, this is really funny. So I said this to my friends, and one of my friends said, Gen Xer, what does that even mean? Because we're the generation that really doesn't get talked about very often. We are in the middle of these guys, all of them, and I don't know if you've noticed, but there's a lot of volleying back and forth between them. Oh, boomer, oh, you're a snowflake, And we're like in the middle going, what's going on? What's going on? And so I think that sometimes we tend to feel forgotten because we don't get talked about very much. We're also a very educated generation, and a lot of us are trying to balance, the way that our parents did things, but also, for those that work outside the home, also balancing busy careers and kids and all that kind of stuff. So we are exhausted trying to keep up with all of those things. And so if you look at us and we're like, we look kind of tired, that's why. Because we are. Yeah. Gen X, Gen Z. What do you want people to know? But you didn't say your name, Natalie Lundahl.
Well, I'm Natalie Lundahl.
There you go.
I think something that I don't know if a lot of people recognize it, but I think since we grew up with like smartphones and the internet at such a young age, I think it's hard to be authentic, especially with your friends, because it feels like everything's documented on the internet forever. And I feel like sometimes it could feel like people are just doing things for likes and shares and stuff like that, which is kind of frustrating, but it is what it is.
I feel kind of similarly about my generation with Instagram. Like, sometimes a lot of my friends have stopped texting because they're posting on Instagram, and you'll just see their life on Instagram, so why text me about it? But I don't use my Instagram, so I don't know about their lives, and that's sad. So yeah.
We rely on these different forms of communication to make relationships where sometimes that doesn't work. Sometimes we need the face-to-face. We need the phone call or a text.
Yeah. Or text, or an email.
Or text, something. Words. Not just online words.
No. Well, I agree completely. Relationships. I mean, that's what we're here for, is to deepen relationships. And my generation, that was very important. I mean, back in the day, people would come to your house and they'd have little calling cards. I mean, this goes way back. You've probably never heard of this at all.
What is it? What does it look like?
It'd be
a card?
like a business card.
Okay.
That would just have your name on it. And you'd walk in the door and you'd put it in a little tray or a little bowl.
At their house?
Uh-huh. And then you'd visit, you'd stay there, and then there was this little record that they had been there. Don't ask me why, other than the fact they wanted to remember that that person was there, so that they can go to their house. It's kind of I'm encouraging you to visit me.
Yeah.
And people went out of their way because you couldn't just call easily. You needed to actually be there in the flesh with people.
Right.
So, relationships.
That brings me to the next question is, what are the joys and struggles you see in those in your generation? And I feel like one of the things that I discussed with some of my girlfriends is that we struggle with being overly busy. We're doing too many things. We have too many social events that we FOMO, fear of missing out. We want to go to everything because we don't want to miss out. And in talking, at least my sister-in-law and I were talking about how our parents didn't have these social events 7 days a week that they were going to. It was, you saw people at church on Sunday and maybe you saw someone Friday night, but it it was never 7 days a week that you had all these things going on all the time. And so that's one of the struggles I think that millennials feel is that, you're saying, I'm here and there, whatever, and I'm everywhere constantly, and I'm exhausted from all of these things, and I'm choosing to go to these social events, but I don't want to miss out. And not every, a lot of that is my personality that I want to miss out, but a lot of times it's, that's one of the struggles is that we're too busy doing too many things, having too many obligations or things that we said yes to participate in.
You're preparing yourself for age.
Yeah.
Exhausted.
Yeah. So what are the joys and struggles you see in those in your generation? That's the question we're on.
Well, yeah, the opposite happens in my life. I think loneliness is a problem that a lot of our generation deals with. If our career is done, which mine is, boy is it, and I, home, and what do? I'm sorry, I don't want to watch TV all day. That's not a great way to handle my time. And then you start feeling guilty. Oh, I should be reading my Bible. Then I should be. And pretty soon I have a pile of books that I'm reading, but not, you don't stick with it. You read a little. And so it's a time, I think, of feeling kind of by ourselves unless we reach out to others. Yeah. That's when it changes. Yeah.
I think for those of us in Gen X, we remember life a little differently, a little slower maybe. When we weren't being watched by everything, we didn't have cameras everywhere. I had besides my dysfunctional family, I had a pretty idyllic childhood. I grew up on a dairy farm. I got to ride my bike to my friend's house because we lived on this dead-end road. So, that type of freedom, I think, is definitely a joy of our generation that I think those who came after us. I was talking to another friend about, how you can become reactive because of what you experienced. So we had a lot of freedom, which means that probably a lot of us made a lot of mistakes because we didn't have a lot of supervision. So what did that turn into? Our generation turned into helicopter parents because we know all the mistakes that kids can make when they're unsupervised. So probably we reacted with a little more, I'm trying not to because I'm aware of this phenomenon, but we reacted by being more protective of our kids. I remember one of my neighbors who was a little bit older than me, she did not want her kids to go out front and play by themselves because she was so scared of what might happen. And they were like in 6th grade. And I thought, it's so sad, but we also grew up in a time where, everybody's watching the news and all the things that could happen, and it's being replayed over and over and over. And so I think there was some fear there for those of us in my generation because of those two things. So we may have overacted. I think one of the things, I love this, one of my friends said, a joy, we don't get blamed for much, but we also don't get credit for much. But I think because we're kind of stuck in the middle there, that is true. It is nice to not be blamed for things, though. So.
I think what Allison just said about not getting credit for things made me think about how I think one of the struggles with Gen Z is like, if you're in music, you can just play a piece or sing a piece, and then you can look online and someone will play it better or sing it better or what have you. And that's like where the comparison trap comes in, and like someone's prettier than you or more active than you or has a prettier boyfriend than you, like stuff like that, I think drags us down. But I think a joy is like being able to communicate with friends so easily, and yeah.
That's a great point.
And it's definitely a nice benefit. I mean, I think of, being on both ends of that. I had a friend that lived like across the field. Her family lived on another farm. We could not see each other, but we would like drag our phone cords out to the door and like, I'm waving at you, can you see me? We couldn't see each other. I mean, you can video chat now. It's, so cool. There's such great benefits of growing up in a time where we do have all this technology. Think of grandparents. If you have grandchildren and children that are far away, you still get to see them because we have these amazing things that we just carry around in our pocket now. Yeah.
I personally, when we were growing up, there weren't many fears about being out and about doing whatever because the news wasn't up to the minute. Maybe something was happening, but they didn't know it. The general population didn't know it. One of my favorite, I don't think Mary's here. Okay, then I can tell us. We lived about a block and a half from the junior high school. And one time the neighborhood kids, went over to the junior high school and we were going to play hide and seek. Okay? How we got in the junior high, it was called junior high then, by the way, not middle school. But anyway, we went under the fence. That's the first thing that was wrong. And then, everybody hid. And I remember I was it, and finally I was yelling, "Ollie, ollie, oxen free," trying to get the group to show up, because I couldn't find people. Nobody came out. Finally, I left and went under the fence all by myself, went back to our house, and the kids were all playing out there. They just left me there by myself. Well, it wasn't on the evening news, but I've been scarred for life by that. Don't trust your older sister.
I was going to say, if Mary was there, she left you.
Oh, dear. As far as struggles also, health and so forth, that's a struggle when you're in our generation. I have a terrible time hearing, as I said, what was that? Because I have no hearing in my right ear, none. The doctor says it's non-functional. And I do have hearing in my right ear. So, of course, everybody's on my left side. So I'm going like this to get it all. But we have some of those problems. And that can be a struggle. And it can also make us feel stupid because we don't understand something being said. Well, really, truly, if we could hear it, maybe we wouldn't be stupid. Maybe we would. But, it does. It makes you feel that way.
Yeah, or isolated.
Yeah.
Yeah, because of that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, should I ask my question? Oh, this is good. What generational stereotypes do you see that keep us from connecting? Well, just like I just said, if you think I can't hear, you could look at me and think, I don't want to talk to her. She's not going to know what I'm saying. But that's a stereotypical thing. Or like the Golden Girls, if any of you have watched that through the years. Not everybody our age is like the Golden Girls. The mother, Sophia, is just, she's so blunt. She'll say anything to anybody and feels entitled to do that because she's old, and so she can do that. Or complain constantly. If the ladies leave the room and somebody comes to the door and they say, Sophia, you get the door, and she goes, fine and dandy. The oldest one's got to go answer the door. But that's stereotyping us. We might feel the same, but we'd probably answer the door. Right. We wouldn't complain about it. Yeah, things that need to be repeated, you feel like a bother. And again, that's because of the hearing issue, or just flat out not understanding.
Right.
Like stuff about computers and stuff like that. Oh my goodness. The other thing in my life is that I forget words. Well, like Jana here. No, Sana.
That would be my whole life.
I know. We do. We forget words. And so when Mary and Larry, that's my sister and brother-in-law, and I get together, we're always filling in the blanks for each other. And so what we call our conversation is fill in the blank conversations. And Larry's the best. Oh, you know. And we're supposed to be able to figure out who it is out of the entire church from that. And he gets so irritated. Okay, now I finished with Mary and Larry. Next.
That's so funny. I think one of the generational stereotypes that keeps us from connecting maybe with other generations, maybe the older generations, is that we're only available by text or email, and we don't have the time to stop and talk to you because we're either looking down or we're on our way somewhere else. And I absolutely, that is true. I would take responsibility for that action at some point, I'm sure. But it doesn't mean that that's all that we are, and it doesn't mean that we don't need to have a face-to-face conversation with someone older or someone younger or someone that can guide us and mentor us. Maybe you can get our attention by sending us a text, and then we'll look up and say, oh, hello. But also, we do still value and need wisdom from our older generation. And we do, I guess it's easier for someone younger to text us, so that's a good thing. But we're not only going to talk by technology. We're fully capable and able to have conversations and want to and probably desire to, but we've had these screens put in front of us, and it just is maybe more convenient to do it that way. So forgive us for that.
And I think those of us in Gen X, we were the latchkey kids, so we grew up being pretty self-reliant, but that doesn't mean that we don't need help. I think that a lot of us, we do have a lot of things kind of figured out, but we still need people older and younger than us to help us with things. Rebecca's like, I don't have it figured out. Oh, Amber doesn't, okay. But sometimes just gently prodding us instead of like, oh, she's got it under control, she's, figured out what she needs to do. Asking questions like, hey, do you need a hand with that? Do you need help with something? But not always trying to answer our questions for us, like helping us discover some of those things that maybe we don't actually know the answers to.
Well, and there's nothing like being asked. It makes you feel valued. Yeah. You may not even have the answer, but that's good.
Yeah.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
And I think from the older generation too, we don't expect you to know everything. We know that you have a lot of wisdom, but when we come to you with an issue, we don't necessarily need you to solve that problem for us. You don't need to be responsible for that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if it's a general, Gen Z thing or a teenager thing, but I think it's hard to connect with older generations because maybe they think we don't care because we're always on our phone. We're addicted to our phones, which is... But
so we need to send you the text to say we'd like a conversation with you, Natalie.
Yeah, I get it.
And I think since we have music so accessible that we can just stream, there's a lot of people at school that just listen to music and ignore everyone else, which is fine, I guess. Do what you want. But it's annoying when they like ignore you because they're just listening to music. But when I do like tear down, I usually keep one ear out just in case someone's like, hey, I need help. But usually if I'm listening to music, it's okay for someone to bother me unless it's Rebecca Lundahl. I just need my alone time sometimes.
But it is okay for us to be like, hey, even if
Yeah.
you have like the hearing, because I don't use those either. I think
Yeah.
that's an ear problem, I think. But I do often if I see like your generation with the headphones, and I'm like, well, they're out. I can't. Because I
Don't
know
even
that
try.
you want your time or you want your space, or that's like I guess I kind of feel like that's like a go away. But you're saying it's not necessarily a go away.
Not for me, no.
Not for you. Okay, for other people maybe. But maybe I should try. Test them out.
Test the waters.
God test the waters.
I think another thing might be that we just don't care about anything. That might be another teenager thing. But I procrastinate everything. I'm always late. I finished that slide at 3 o'clock, and we had about a month to do it. And
Actually, I think I got it after 4 o'clock.
wow.
I'm just kidding.
And all of them wrote notes, but I have one singular marking on my paper. And that was from when we talked about this a month ago.
Yeah.
So
there you have it.
and that kind of leads into this. My only marking is on the next question. What do you need from other generations, or how would you like to be approached?
Which we kind of talked about. It's okay to approach you if you have your things in. What did I say? Oh, I think my answer for this kind of ties into I do want to be approached even if I'm looking at my phone. Oh, I think I said something about, I don't know if this is a me thing or my generation thing, but I tend to not make as much eye contact these days because I'm moving so fast, or I'm going from one thing to a next, or I'd rather look at my phone. And I think that I need other generations, older and younger, to stop me and say, hello, how are you? Or what's new? Or nice weather? Or did I just say what's weather? Nice weather is what I meant to say. Or for someone younger to not feel that they can approach me because I'm not like making direct eye contact, or I'm moving too fast, or I obviously look busy. I want to be approached. I want to be approachable. So I guess I need to look at my phone less. But I think especially in the church, and especially for younger generations, I wouldn't ever want someone from a younger generation to feel that I wasn't approachable, that they couldn't talk to someone in the church about something that they maybe couldn't talk to their parents to. And I feel that that's a responsibility for a lot of us, that I don't ever want someone to look outside of the church for information that should be coming from, or could be coming from, someone that has that wisdom inside the church. I think that we should all be approachable in that way. So that's the way I want to be approached, is to be approached. And you can always approach me with a joke or whatever, I don't know, anything. Very approachable. But if you don't try, you don't know.
Well, that's it. Yeah, that's good. I've known you since you were just little.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you've always been.
I've always been approachable.
Yes, you have. I love you. Sunday mornings, I have the most glorious time because, that whole loneliness idea that I was mentioning earlier. Sunday mornings, I'm coming to my family. Mm-hmm. You're my family. And I've always looked at my church as being just that. And so I've got daughters, and I'm so thankful for that. And then I've got the next generation. And on a Sunday morning, Callie Haley, I lost track of where Haley is. over there. Oh, yeah, there you are, honey. And Elizabeth, Monica's daughter, she always comes up.
Oh.
And the Ball family, all the kids, including Caleb, they all come up for their hugs. And Caleb always shows me his latest picture that he's working on because he loves his art. And for me to be able to encourage those kids and just love on them is the best thing I can do. I feel so filled up. And I'm always telling them, if you ever have something you want to talk about, you let me know. You know, you all got cell phones, I guess, but it's the truth, because sometimes there are things that kids don't want to talk to their parents about.
Right.
And so they'll call another friend that they've made at church. But watching Zach and, you know, so many of our kids grow up here and be a part of their lives, helping them with VBS and all those things, and the harvest party that's coming up. I get to be a greeter. Well, that sounds fun to me. I mean, because I get to see all these people as they arrive. And I appreciate the fact that the kids see me as somebody that's safe and loves them unconditionally. Doesn't matter, even if their jeans are all full of holes.
I think I relate to some of what Sana says too about just being busy and giving off the appearance that I'm busy all the time, so I can't be approached. You know, stop us and
Physically stop.
talk to me. But also, I think that goes along with our self-reliant facade, too. Those of us in Gen X, you know, we've got it figured out. We can do it. I can do it by myself, like the toddler, you know, I can do it by myself. We can't always do it by ourselves. And so we do need help. We need people to stop and ask if we need help. And I think listen to us too. You know, don't forget us, even though we're the quiet one in the middle. Which, you know, as I was doing my little slide thing and reflecting on kind of our generation, and I think probably all generations go through this because I was putting Elizabeth's slide together too. You know, you guys had Woodstock. So you were like pretty rebellious in your generation too. I think Gen X, I mean, like my early years, it was like Gen X, we were the rebels, you know, and what's happened to us now, I don't know. You know, I think every generation kind of goes through this, like, we have it all figured out, we're the rebel, we're gonna do things differently. But yeah, now I don't know where I was going to go with that, but.
Well, going back to what you were saying about looking busy or appearing busy, I think especially maybe the people that are more involved at church, sometimes I'll be honest, sometimes I'm there to do my task that I was asked to do. And I've had Sundays where I've been on worship team and then not talked to a single person in the congregation and then left also. And I led worship that morning, and that's not the reason why I'm coming to church. I'm not coming here to do, you know, to serve in this way and not connect with others. And if that's part of the problem is that I'm moving too fast or I have too many things to do, I need to be stopped. I need to be engaged and, you know that, and a lot of you, a number of you have, you know, grabbed me, thank you for singing today, or I enjoyed your singing, and that's priceless to me to hear. Even if I don't know you, or even if you're like, oh, she doesn't, you know, she's busy or whatever. That speaks volumes to make me feel, I'm not that I need the put up for, oh, you sing good, that's not what I'm, but the contact of being noticed even though I'm doing all these tasks. I think it's important. And Allison's always doing everything always. We have to stop her and say hello, and you're a human, and I see that you are here, and thank you, and yeah. Right?
Yes. I am a human. I am not a robot.
You are a human.
I promise.
I think Gen Z just wants patience and respect, which I think is probably another teenager thing. But a lot of Gen Z is teenagers.
Yeah.
And I think We just want our ideas to be heard and not to be shut down just because we're young and probably lazy, but
Teenager.
yeah. I heard what you were saying about like every generation has their rebel phase, and I think it's really impactful for me personally to see like all generations, like including Gen Z, to be at like protests for things that they care about and actively like serving communities that they care about even though they're younger, and I think that's something really notable.
All right, our final question, which we're going to go through quick because we're lots of chatting. What do you appreciate about the other generations? So let's go from youngest to oldest. So Natalie, what do you
like about it?
Yeah. Tell us what's good about us.
Or bad.
I think, kind of going back to being approachable, I think a lot of people come up to me during service. Not during service, but like before and after. Hopefully not during. But
Just crawling to you.
and I think it's really nice to have people that have your back and they're older than you. Because I'm constantly around people that are my age, so I don't get very many perspectives. But I've like had lunch people that are older than me, and I think that's a good perspective to get. And I think learning about like history and like how to be a human being is very impactful for us.
Yeah.
Good job, honey.
Yeah, that's great. I would say, what was the question? What do we appreciate about the generation? Sorry.
What do you appreciate about us?
Yes, I appreciate, going back to Natalie, I appreciate the boldness and the creativity of Gen Z. I think, like you're saying, when I was 16, I don't think I watched the news or cared about issues or things like that. I never invested in things greater than my little circle. And so I think it's admirable that your generation is involved and notices these things and takes action when necessary. That's incredible. That's extremely valuable. And also the creativity, you know, TikTok and Instagram, and everyone has a talent that is, yes, maybe being seen multiple times, but God gave you guys these gifts. And I mean, in my generation, we wouldn't just like sing a beautiful song and put it on, well, maybe in MySpace a little bit, but not really. Like we didn't really do that at all. And so it's incredible that all of this talent and creativity and, you know, with TikTok, there's a lot of like videos and movies being made now, and that's incredible leaps being made in that world. So I think those are awesome things, and especially in a generation where you guys are really being pushed to grow up too fast. And I think that perhaps it can also help you realize a need for Jesus at a younger age, which maybe that's hard to say, but it's also, I think, a good thing to see the need for Jesus in addition to a desire. And for our older generations, I love that you have the respect and the need for tradition, and like you were saying, you love sharing about your history and how you grew up and stories like that, and we need to hear those things. And I love, my folks are the same way. My dad is the same way. He loves to tell others about his story, and I think it's important that we don't forget. And that we are able to remember these stories and lineage to the Anistons and things like that, the Dows, that we can remember those things, and also all of the wisdom that you carry from your generations to give to us, because I can't figure it out by myself. And everyone has a story that God wants to use, whether you're outside of my generations. All of your stories are important to help me grow in my relationship with God and grow in life as well.
Well, we can't figure it out for ourselves.
Yeah.
There's this, yeah, that is so important. I figure I'm the oldest, so
But you
want me
skip
to
me anyway because I'm Gen X.
I think you're so young. I thought you were already. No, I'm kidding. I'll shut up.
Well, to the baby boomers, I mean, thanks for raising us as Gen X, because you did do that. But also, I think with your wisdom, the knowledge that we can slow down a little bit. Life doesn't always have to be busy, and sometimes it's better when we slow down a little bit. And then I think for those younger than us, you guys like to have fun, and sometimes we need to remember that we need to have fun. And just your perspective and life lessons, I think, are really important for us to know too. Like, you have wisdom in different ways that we need to hear.
Yeah, basically, we can learn so much from each other if we just take time to do it, you know? Because, we all attend the same church. We have a lot of common things in the thread of our lives, and to not, like, I know your dad and your mom well. I think that one of the things, just one of the many things I appreciate about your generation, I'm putting you together right now, is the way you do look after your children. I taught for 50 years, so I saw a lot of changes. Isn't that nuts? A lot of changes in the way children are being taught. And now, if you do listen to the news, I mean, there are things, they're changing history. They're taking certain statues down and saying it didn't happen or whatever, and actually taking them out of textbooks. Same thing with just basic things about curriculum, writing, how you write, things that were very important rules when we were young. That's not a rule now. You can start every sentence with "and" if you want to, but we weren't supposed to. And then when the kids had to be at home going to school during the time when we were all on screen, that was so hard. And yet moms, aunties, whoever was helping the kids were they filled in a big gap that their teacher wasn't filling. And during that time, they learned about what the kids are learning or weren't learning. And so I think some good things came from it, because parents did find out some things that they didn't know. And they found out that they need to be proactive. And when they find out something they don't agree with that's being taught at the school, they need to go down there and talk to the principal about it and see how, their children can be excluded from meetings that shouldn't be held for their child. And then along the same line of education, I appreciate Natalie so much and her generation, because you, sweetheart, are being reared in the church by your parents who love Jesus, and they're teaching you to love Jesus. And along with that, then, you're going into your school where that's not popular. And yet you are learning how to stick up for being different. Stick up for yourself and not just go along with the crowd because that's what the crowd says. It's okay. It's like fighting for what you believe in. And I love that. And I'm proud of all of you and your generations.
Thank you. All right, so that was our final question. I just want to say, too, that one of the reasons we did this is, outside of church especially, the culture wants to divide us based on our generations. There's a lot of things that can divide us, but Jesus is the one thing that does unify us. And inside the church, I think it's really important to remember that we hear a lot of messages about how we're different, I'm reading through the Gospels right now, and just the way that Jesus was with everybody, whether they were from a different culture, different background, whatever it was, he always unified people and loved people no matter where they were at. And I think that's one of the things that we need to do too. So despite our differences between the things that, are sometimes funny, sometimes not so funny about what makes us different as generations, they do have the ability to divide us, but to remember to be unified. So, discussion questions. We do not have discussion leaders this year, so the oldest and most wise person at your table will be your discussion leader today. There is a piece of paper on your table that has these questions on it. So if you're not able to see the screen quite as well, there is a piece of paper. And you don't need to go through these questions verbatim. They're just to give you an idea of some things that you can be talking about. So some of the same questions that we talked about and a few others. So Angie will be back up in about 15 minutes. Just to give you guys a little bit of time to discuss amongst your table.